Hey everyone, Internet Vicious Book Reader here. Today I want to talk about Orientalism by Edward W. Said. Orientalism is one of those things that I rarely heard of in my life and I never really tried to dig deeper into it, which is a shame since this book was written in 1978 and has unfortunately only gotten more relevant as time passed. Thankfully for me, a few months ago, I heard it on one of Chris Kanzler's early video regarding Ethan Klein's liberal Zionism, and it makes me want to look into it further, so I bought the book. Orientalism is basically one of Western imperialism tool on making the group they want to attack into a group of others, so they can easily draw people into the imbalance us versus them mentality. For example, in modern era, America and UK use this a lot to make China bad mentality for their Red Scare and other anti-communist propaganda to make Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East into this one blob of group instead of a diverse place with different kind of people living in it. It's one of the ways they created something like American exceptionalism or Israel exceptionalism, where it is okay to do war crimes because they are the good guy, and the innocent people they do war crimes to are the bad guy. The word Oriental itself, like many English language, have gone through many changes. Nowadays, it's not uncommon to see businesses that use them, but the origin of the word was used by the most evil empire, France. In the 70s, it is used to describe the East in comparison to the European West. It's of course a descriptor that they made up and forced to the world at large, since the dividing line of West and East on the map is decided by them. But Orient is not just about geographical situation, it's also about cultural, socio-economic, aesthetic, history, etc. That's why there is the opposite of Orient, Occident. Orient is used to distinguish and differentiate what the West paint as lesser than the Occident. So there people know that compared to the Orient, it's Europe first or America first. I mentioned at the start that the book was published in 1978 and it unfortunately showed in an unflattering way. Like many other classic academia and new academia, in a way the writing can be insufferable to go through. But it too tells people the name of studies and authors that the author used to examine how Orientalism is used in their work, which is important since these are who the West considered as expert back in those days. And since the author is Palestinian who grew up in Palestine and in Egypt and spent his adult life as an academic in America, he's seen how the Zionists use them for fear-mongering among the American Jews, especially because of the liberal culture in America that embraces fascism really well. And he's seen how anti-Arab and anti-Islam sentiment was weaponized in America way before 9/11 happened. This is because a lot of the authority figures in the West are white people who have the racist habit of believing their inherent superiority in comparison to the Orients. In 1910, for example, Arthur James Balfour made a speech to try to convince the government that Britain have the right to govern Egypt instead of Egyptian because they, the Brits, is culturally superior than them. And the source of Balfour belief is from an older teaching of Evelyn Baring, first Earl of Cromer, who becomes the British Controller General of Egypt, who tried to control Egypt to be a vassal colonial state of the Brits. Lord Cromer, who founded and became the president of the Men's League of opposing women suffragists that opposed women's right to vote in Britain, believes that the Brits is inherently superior than the Muslim Arabs. He is basing this solely on that whatever Egypt did is less than what the Brits did, and if there's any exception to those, then that's the abnormal one that should always be discounted solely because they generalize the Brits for being better than the Arabs, not because there is data to support it, mind you. He just really likes his own opinion. It's of course white supremacy, it's racism. Forget that a lot of math and alchemy is based on Arab scholar and more than half of modern Westerners is not even aware that they're counting using Arabic numeral. This is because a big part of Orientalism is used to educate the Western masses in their sentiment toward Arab and Islam. Even when the Ottoman Empire was at the height of its power, Orientalism was used to judge Islam as this barbaric belief, even though the Roman Empire and the European at that time is doing their own barbaric things. And in modern age, despite Muslims saying that the Islam they practice is a peaceful religion, the West still paints them otherwise. This is despite Western religious beliefs doing the same thing that they said Islam are doing. Again, it's Western exceptionalism. When Islam are doing it, it's because Islam is bad, but when Christianity are doing it, it's the dark side of their history or a few bad apples. Never mind that the apples were causing the death of hundreds of thousands of people and are still committing various war crimes in various places today. And because people refuse to learn from history by actually reading, it makes it easy for them to hand wave away the Muslims that are trying to correct them because they're part of the Oriental, so they must be less right than the Western voices and feelings. And as time goes on, Orientalism creates this self-induced paranoia that turns more than their religious belief. Even more than their religion, there is more of a fanaticism and more socially accepted belief that Islam is bad, that the Orient is worse than the Occident or the West, and that the West needs to fix them. And this belief enables their behavior of constantly attacking others with the flimsiest excuse and justification like liberty. As an example of this, the book goes in depth to when Napoleon started his conquest of the East because he thinks that it will damage the British if he did that. It's one of those if I don't steal it, someone else will mentality. On his first attempt at this, he met Egypt that was far bigger than he can handle, so he tricked them into thinking that they were there to learn more about Egypt culture and translate their culture to the French. Egypt accepted them and even gave them a place to live, to learn, and to teach. And from there they started spreading propaganda that fractured further the different cultures in Egypt before the attack. And because it's the West that is doing this is viewed as the Egyptians being naive dumbasses that fall to such a simple trick. But if it's the other way around, we will never hear the end of the cry bullies crying about how their kindness was being taken advantage of. Again, the double standard for the Orientals is there. A lot of it is of course projection, because what the West are doing is so horrible, they imagine what if what they are doing is done to them and then got really angry and offended at their own imagination. Then they escalate their oppression even further. That is why once you see this, you can easily see that every accusation is a confession. In the era around the time this book was published, this only got even more embarrassingly shameless. The teaching of Orientalism at that time has reached both literature and the politician of the West that is barely literate. And then around the Cold War era, where the West, especially America, British and France, was on a self-designated warpath against communism, every Oriental people who to communism is somehow a loss to them. Even though these are not their country, not their land, or not their people, they are not entitled to any of this. The book also talks about how a lot of images of the East was dramatized and sensualized. That's what gave a lot of Westerners the idea that woman from the East is this meek being whose main purpose was to serve men. It's why in modern era there are passport bros from the West creeping on Eastern women. Some of the things that this old Oriental expert wrote about are so degenerate, animal kind of degenerate or dead body kind of degenerate, that modern anime fans sounds like normal people with no fetishes compared to this Western expert on the Orient. And of course, it got even worse once colonialism and imperialism entered the picture, as you might be aware if you read anything about Western imperialism. If you choose to read this book, which I highly recommend that you do, remember that this is an academia book. It will tackle a lot of history, and a lot of it is also history of academia, works of scholars of Orientalism and its further study. Studies that, as I mentioned, are Western voices of what the East is like, and they contain various misinformation from Westerners that had their prejudices against non-white people. These studies then become the cited source and eventually the common sense of a lot of people, despite them being overwhelmingly not factual. So it is important to go through them. But because of its academia nature, you'll have to deal with a ton of words that you never encounter on a day-to-day basis and you'll never use. For example, a chunk of the book goes through the history of philology. You can see the description of what the words mean right now on the screen, but I'm betting that you either never saw it or it's been a while since you saw that word that you'll forget what the words mean in a short while. And that's not the only word that is rarely used in life that is in this book. But the book shows how much Western Orientalism impacted their culture because it's been cited as source for centuries without any fact check from Eastern expert being heard. Again, this book was published in 1978, but it's not until 7 October happened that people are starting to recognize even the atrocity that is happening in Palestine. And even then, after so many more people have become more aware of the effect of the Western imperialism after seeing the evidence from the current live-stream genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza and the apartheid in the West Bank, there are still people who are clutching their own prejudice against the Orient and still double-siding even the genocide. Think of the Israel too and not just the Palestinian. Think of the murderer too and not just the murdered. Think of the rapist too and not just the rape. Think of the Zionists too and not just their victim. Think of the people wearing the boots and not just the people whose neck they are stepping on with those boots. Well, thankfully, a lot of people seem to be more aware of not just Orientalism, but Western imperialism in general, but Western social norm that is formed from Orientalism is still there, even though it is the voice of the East that is solely from Western eyes, filled with all their prejudices and fantasy, racism, Islamophobia, blindness to Buddhist and Hindu, their own infantile sexual fantasy, and other unresolved baggage that they have that is projected to this overall view. And that's why this book, unfortunately, is still important for people to read. I'm giving this a 4.5. What do you think? Let me know if I missed anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it. See ya.